private schools believe that a pupil's appearance has a significant impact on their attitudes and behaviours. Pride in what they wear inherits a sense of belonging amongst pupils, they say. This is reflected in their attire in the form of uniform and creates a respectable image for the school. Other private schools do not have uniform and learners attend school in their civilian clothes. Now, to talk about this, discipline and children adapting without school uniforms, we are joined in studio by Mr. Lebogang Montjane. He's Executive Director at the Independent Schools Association of South Africa. Very good morning to you, sir, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning.
Uniform instills discipline in pupils. Is that a proven fact?
No, actually, there's no causation between discipline and school uniforms. And you cannot reduce a school to its school uniform.
What do you then make of what is happening in South Africa right now with the cost of uniforms escalating, the Competition Commission investigating school governing bodies and, of course, suppliers for collusion, amongst other things?
The Independent Schools Association of Southern Africa has taken note of the advisory given out by the South African Competition Commission. And we do encourage schools to try and follow those guidelines. And of our 765 members, we did tell them they must comply with the guidelines they set out by the Competition Commission. And I think that those guidelines can assist schools to make sure that school uniforms do not get too expensive. We also would encourage many schools, they be public or independent, to consider having second-hand uses for uniforms because children grow. And also, we'd also encourage parents, do not buy uniforms. My mother used to buy uniforms that were 2 or 3 sizes too big for me because that's how we save money. And so I really would think that schools and parents need to be quite sensible on this question. I think the Competition Commission is correct. Schools must try and have multiple suppliers than a single suppliers, and they must get away from exclusive agreements.
Culture and tradition is often cited in this instance. Whose culture and whose tradition are these? And we often in South Africa now, when we talk about education, we hear the phrase, let's decolonize our education. How do you view this?
I don't know what decolonize education means. I think that there are many catchwords and phrases that have lost their meaning in South Africa because too many people are using them. And when you question them what that means, they cannot actually answer you. Schools and traditions evolve. And it is important that schools, and we in ISASA, encourage our schools to evolve their traditions for the realities of their new world. And schools and societies change. So tradition needs to change accordingly and really take cognizance of its history and the time in which we are and the time in which we hope to become as a country.
Now, you, as the Independent Schools Association of South Africa, you have actually pioneered at some schools the transition, if one can call it, away from uniforms. How has that process worked, and how are these schools functioning that have moved away from the uniform, as it were?
Within our membership, we have schools that are very traditional, have very traditional uniforms. Some still have bowler hats. Interestingly enough, of those schools that have actually discussed this issue with the student body and their parents, the most conservative responses often come from the pupils themselves, who say that actually they do not want to change their uniform and they're really quite proud of it. So it is interesting to us that actually when you put it to the students and to the parents, often they seek more tradition than not. But there are independent schools who are part of our members, and in ISASA we only have good quality schools who either have quality, values and diversity. And part of that diversity, some of our schools don't have school uniforms. And I know that you earlier mentioned the fact that you went to Germany and you didn't wear uniforms. Our German school in South Africa doesn't wear uniforms. Our Waldorf schools do not wear uniforms. And so, but for our new schools that are coming onto the market now, often they're using uniform that is quite generic and actually can be worn by both boys and girls, free, less constricted. And I think that ultimately diversity and decisions by communities, schools, must be made by pupils and their families and parents.
So if you were an advisor to the basic education department, if I can ask you to wear that hat for a few minutes, what would you propose they do? Give the choice to parents and students and have both options available in South Africa?
I really love the South African Constitution, and I'm a passionate advocate of it. And our South African Schools Act also comes out of our South African Constitution. And part of how the South African Schools Act is structured, it gives freedom and yet participation for each school to communicate and decide what it wants to be. And I think that that ultimately is what I believe that the South African Constitution and the South African Schools Act is appropriately structured, so that schools themselves make decisions. School governing bodies, which have student representatives, parents, and teachers. So I think in many ways, we have wonderful instruments. So I encourage parents, especially those who are concerned about costs of uniforms, raise it within your school community to make sure that costs remain reasonable.
In conclusion, you've made the experience. If children are allowed to wear civilian clothes in South Africa, specifically to go to school, does that erode the identity and the unifying factors that we talk about, or have you made a different experience?
Just like you, I also have had an experience of going to school outside of South Africa, and my school didn't have a uniform, but it had a dress code. Ironically, when you do not have a school uniform, the students choose to wear very similar clothes.
That is true.
And actually, so having a uniform or not uniform, actually, it really is neither here nor there. But there are advantages to having a uniform, because if you're a poorer family, you do not necessarily have to keep up with the fashion trends of children, which change with the fashion industry, sometimes on a quarterly basis or half-yearly.
Is that not dangerous in South Africa, that we could be hiding inequality and just sugarcoat what's really happening in our society?
School is about the mind, and it is about character. And ultimately, that is what we need to focus in on, not who has how many pierced earrings, where somebody has tattoos. And I think that really having a uniform and a code does assist sometimes the focus on education. But as I said earlier, discipline cannot come from a uniform or not a uniform. It comes from the institutional culture of a school.
Culture, culture, culture. Thank you for coming in today and clearing that up. That's Mr. Lebogang Montjane. He's the Executive Director at the Independent Schools Association here in South Africa. Discipline does not come from what you wear. Discipline comes from what's instilled in you. What you believe, what you become, your culture, ultimately. Thank you for joining us and giving us a, as you say, a contrarian view sometimes, a little bit like that. Here we have it. We're gonna take a short little break. At the top of the hour, we'll be back with our top stories, news headlines and the like, but we'll also continue and escalate the discussion around affordability of uniforms, collusion with monopolies, and also, is it still necessary?